everyone. I am Vishal Salvi, Global Head for the Cybersecurity business at Cognizant. I'm here today at our latest Cognizant AI lab in Bangalore, and I'm joined by Rajesh Varrier. We are going to discuss a very important topic because the cybersecurity mandate and the modernization mandate of enterprise estate have always been seen as two different topics. But with the advent of the AI frontier models which are able to identify vulnerabilities at machine speed, it's very important now how we see these together interlinked. And that's really what we're going to discuss today. Thank you so much, Rajesh, for joining us.
Hi, Vishal. AI has really put us at a point in time which is extremely exciting and scary at the same time. Right? We are at an inflection point. For years, when we used to talk about application modernization, it was primarily about productivity, improving customer experience, improving overall agility of the business, and maybe cloud economic agenda. With frontier AI changing, the speed of vulnerability discovery, things have changed, isn't it? As recently, we have seen how Anthropic came Fable 5, Mythos 5, describing Mythos class of models having capability to discover vulnerability much better than before, right? The whole landscape is changing rapidly. At some point you have described this as a Y2K moment. How do you really see it?
Yeah, I think this analogy is a very hard-hitting analogy, and it's very important because there are a lot of commonalities between the way we need to respond to how this new threat landscape is emerging and the ability to discover dormant threats. And if you look at the commonalities, clearly it's a widespread industry problem. There is also a definite time window which is there for you to fix it. Of course, in case of Y2K, the date was absolute, but in this case, of course, it is all about when the threat actors get the parity, when you are actually under tremendous risk. But I think more importantly, what we realized in Y2K was that there were so many collateral aspects of technology modernization. There were multiple ERP programs and modernization programs which came out, and so Y2K was not only about fixing the date problem, but fixing the industry technology modernization issue. This is a great opportunity for us to now address that problem because there is a clear and defined danger and a risk to the enterprise ecosystem.
Yeah, you talk about compounding technical debt, and really this is a board level issue, isn't it? And if you look at where we are today, the entire cybersecurity offense piece of it is moving at machine speed, right? And the defense portion, which is about finding vulnerabilities and then patching them up, is actually moving at enterprise speed, right? What do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, this asymmetry is really the core issue, right? Because we've always had this challenge of how we are able to keep pace with the growing vulnerabilities and attack surface in any enterprise. But with the ability for us to now identify threats at machine speed, the scale is staggering, right? And we're going to have now millions of vulnerabilities coming up together, and we obviously still have enterprise calendar way of managing the patching. And so there is obviously a need to now look at how do we overall crash that whole cycle by building more accountability, streamlining the processes, and also finding out better way to architect the remediation process.
So, while AI has accelerated the offense, as an AI builder company, Cognizant has accelerated defense, allowing clients to secure and modernize estates faster than what it would traditionally do. Having said that, let's get precise here. Vishal, not every application or every legacy application is at risk, isn't it? The question is not simply of what is old, but what is truly at risk.
No, I think if you have to just define the problem a little better, I mean, if you look at right now enterprises like airline industry or you talk about banking industry, there is a fair amount of legacy architecture out there, and it's been working and it's been delivering the goods, right? So clearly we have a various ways in which we want to look at the technical debt, right? So when it comes to the vulnerable estate, there are 4 legacy patterns that clients should really look for. The number one is the systems that are internet adjacent. So let me give you a few examples of that. We have core banking systems extended through digital banking APIs, or we have healthcare claim systems connected to the provider portals. So what we have done is that we have actually increased the attack surface by getting the back-end applications interconnected for business transactions, but that has increased the risk to the applications. Second example is the systems built on brittle and unsafe foundations. Examples of that are C, C++, components supporting trading, telecom, and embedded or industrial systems. Another example is highly customized COBOL applications that are brittle, poorly documented, or hard to safely change. So these are again important aspects where you need to take these into account to manage the patching and the change for these applications. The third example is system dependent or unsupported components. Again, examples of that are manufacturing systems dependent on unsupported middleware, retail platforms with old payment, loyalty, or customer data integrations. Now, it's very important that obsolescence is again managed so that in case there is a breach or a exploit, you don't want to have a situation where those systems are unsupported. So that modernization is very, very important. And the fourth area, which is also equally important, is that systems that are slow to observe, test, and patch. And what we mean by that is that there is obviously a need to reduce the patch life cycle because the average time taken right now is 55 days. At the same time, you also need to make sure that they do not break and are rendered unavailable, because if you look at an example of airline reservation, crew scheduling, or maintenance systems, a downtime is unacceptable. A healthcare claims platform where disruption could affect payments or care operations. So these are very critical, mission critical applications, and you need to make sure that they are available while the changes happen. So I think these 4 elements are critical to be considered when you start looking at the modernization mandate.
This is where the conversation has to change at a leadership level, isn't it, Vishal? The CIO might own the application portfolio modernization, mandate. The CISO owns cyber resilience mandate. The CTO owns the architecture. The CFO owns, the capital and the budget investments, etc. But the problem really doesn't fall anywhere specifically in one bucket, isn't it? Isn't it kind of spread across?
No, I think, when it comes to cybersecurity, right, it has always been an issue where, you have to get, the village to work together to solve the problem, right? And the accountability is across all the C-suite levels. Clearly, the CISO is the catalyst to the driving the change and making sure it is successful. But, the accountability is across all the stakeholders. Obviously, everybody has a starting position, so the architect, chief architect, supposed to make sure that the architecture is robust enough. The CIO has to drive the digital innovation. The CFO needs to make sure that there is, prudence in terms of how you manage your finances. But at the same time, with the growing need to accelerate and implement digital, we have to be cognizant that we are increasing that attack surface, and so the CISO has a role to play in terms of getting everybody together and decide on how do you prioritize the right spends to protect and build trust and security in that infrastructure. And I think in today's context, it's ever more important to align and prioritize and get everybody on the same page to decide on how you're going to invest and put the right prioritization for remediation.
Fair enough. Vishal, I just want to make sure that we're not sounding like an alarmist. It's not like every legacy application needs to be today repatched and redone, isn't it? Some could be probably defended, some may be retired, some might require immediate intervention. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's going to be a combination of all of that. I think the key thing is that you need to have a clear strategy in terms of what you are going to do. You need to make sure, like we talked about, that we need to have a clear mandate and ownership on across the stakeholders on how we are going to drive the investments as well as remediation. And then when it comes to the actual implementation, you would have a strategy where you will have to re-architect, you would have to modernize, you would have to retire, but also you will have to decide a clear prioritization in terms of how you are going to discover your crown jewels, identify the exposure that is there for the crown jewels, identify how you are going to address that gap before this is actually something which can be exploited by the threat actors. So all of that needs to happen at simultaneously. But like you said, we don't need to be alarmist about this. It can be done in a very calibrated and a very strategic manner. The key thing is that you have to do it intentionally, and you need to start now.
When you're talking about calibrated and intentional manner, this is not like a massive transformation exercise, right? It's more about creating the roadmap first and identifying systems where this needs to be done here and now, isn't it? It's not like a massive transformation exercise in that sense across the board.
Yeah, I think it is a part about just taking forward your cybersecurity agenda in your enterprise, right? I think what has happened as a part of the post mythos is that the general awareness levels of what is at risk is well understood. So it is all about now incremental steps that you would want to take to make sure that, for example, we always wanted to do patching, but today the average time to do patching is 55 days. So I think we need to now address that and solve that problem. And now with the technology and AI being available to us, you can obviously reimagine that problem and see how we can crash it from 55 days to a 10-day cycle. I mean, that's the need, because if you are able to identify gaps at machine speed, you cannot be addressing the remediation at a calendar speed. Yeah, so I think finally my thoughts are that this is obviously an important opportunity as much as it is a challenge, and it's also about how do you now fundamentally change some of the things that you are trying to do. So while it is not a major revamp, it is an important call to address the issue fundamentally. But we at Cognizant, we are building our own solutions and ways in which we can address this problem.
So that is the mandate. Legacy modernization is now about becoming defensible in an AI-enabled threat environment. This is a conversation every CIO, CISO, CTO, and CFO needs to come together to have.